Very good evening to all. First of all, I am very much thankful to the organizers of this colloquium for giving me an invitation to present this work here. And this is a joint presentation. Our Professor P.P. Joglekar, Professor P. Ajit Prasad, Rajesh S.V., Dr. Jeevan Kharagwal, all of these people have contributed a lot in this, especially for having the material from the sites they excavated. And Professor Joglekar explained very detailed about the zooarchaeological aspects of Harappan civilization. And he explained about how the animal domestication and the parallel hunting and exploitation of wild fauna, all these things have been traced through several sets of archaeological works. And meanwhile, some aspects like taxa-specific studies are not much popular in zooarchaeological studies, especially in India, especially like Joglekar sir mentioned, for fish and mollusks, some work have been done, but for many others like reptiles, birds, and all those things are still very much understudied. And when in this presentation, I will be talking about some fish remains collected from 4 sites located in the Gulf of Kutch region. And even with this very small sets of samples, we can have so many interpretations on fish consumption and fish use. I mean, if this kind of studies can be extended towards other parts of Harappan sites, then a lot more things can be understood, of course. And this kind of study is possible because of the availability of a reference collection, which is recently set up at the University of Kerala, presently set up at the University of Kerala. And this collection is quite a comprehensive one. It has nearly 300 fish specimens, which has a very good coverage of species and different families. That is how we can identify the fish remains to species level, or up to at least genus level. For those who are not much familiar with the zooarchaeological methods, this slide may help them. And you can see the modern specimens around, and in the middle, you can see one archaeological specimen, which is from Bagasra. This is a dentary bone, or the lower jaw bone of a fish. And you can see the it matches very well with this specific specimen, which is Acanthophagus berda. And this way, we can very specifically identify the species of these fish remains. And this is the location of 4 sites I chosen for this study. It's located in the Gulf of Kutch region. And among these 4 sites, 3 are excavated. 2 sites have been excavated by MS University, Baroda. Another one, Kanmer, was excavated. It's a joint excavation with Rajasthan Vidyapeeth. And these 3 sites are fortified settlements. And for Shikarpur and Bagasra, settlements are there inside the fortification as well as outside the fortification. And at Kanmer, the settlement was confined towards inside the fortification. Maybe outside was also there, but there was no remains left. And this is a summary of whole identified fish taxa from these sites. And the sample size is indicated there. The maximum number of specimens from Bagasra, and from other sites also, we have very good number of samples for this study. And these are the list of identified fish species or common English names of this fish, and they represent 13 different fish families. And the total number of species is up to 29. 29 different species of fish have been identified through these studies. And these are the fish remains they look like. And in many of the excavations, these kind of specimens are not properly collected. There is a collection bias in many of the excavations. It is sad to say, but I'm not blaming any archaeologists for that. And it is because many a time people don't recognize these kind of things, especially these kind of otoliths. They are very rarely collected. These kind of otoliths are collected mostly by MS University's excavations. And in many other excavations, these kind of otolith kind of things are generally considered as stones or something, but they are actually related to animal remains. From Bagasra, this is a phase-wise distribution of representation of species, or the kind of fish, simply we can say. From the phase 1, it's mostly marine and estuarine fishery. Phase 2 and 3 is marine, estuarine, and there is a marginal use of some freshwater fish as well. And towards phase 4, that is post-urban period, we can see marine fish along with estuarine fishery, specifically with a higher quantity of Bagridae species, Bagridae family, especially mist species. And this is a kind of a freshwater fish that is significant. I will tell you, I will show you that thing in the next slides. And this is the picture emerging out of material from Kanmer. From Kanmer, first it is mostly estuarine and some marine fish. And from Kanmer 2A to B, it's mostly marine and estuarine. Towards Kanmer 3, that is late Harappan, there is a slight fall in the marine fishery. Meanwhile, the Bagridae, the presence of Bagridae is in higher frequency. And Ariidae is also represented in lesser quantity at Kanmer in relation to other two sites. This is Shikarpur. Shikarpur also represents mostly marine estuarine fish. And towards phase 3, there is a slight fall in the marine fishery again. And here the presence of Bagridae is mostly everywhere, but in smaller quantities. The fourth site is Navinal. This is not an excavated site. This is all from surface collections. From the surface collection, we got a large number of otoliths. We had 2,257 otoliths collected from mostly from a particular area of the site, which is very much exposed, and some fish bones as well. And these otoliths have been very much helpful in identifying their species for many of them. And from this collection, from these excavated sites, lattice calcarifer is the dominating species of the single species. And apart from that, the Ariidae is also represented in good numbers. Cyanidae family is also represented in good numbers. And in towards phase 4 or post-urban phase, there is an increased appearance of Bagridae, as I mentioned before. This is very interesting because this fish has some preference towards freshwater environments. These are not usually found in estuarine environment. That means during this period, yes, freshwater environments were exploited slightly more. There could be some possible reasons for this. There could be a lesser availability of infrastructure and expertise in marine fishery. There could be a possibility of small scale fishery practice by another group of people. There could be a change in preference of the fish consumers as well. And there is a strong chance for some changes in the environmental settings as well. These two fishes, they look alike, but the upper one is marine catfish and the lower one is Bagridae. And based on that species identified, we can estimate some kind of zones of fish exploitation. Like one area is marine. It is something like off the seacoast, we can say deep sea fishing. And we have very less amount of fish coming from this area. And most of the fish was coming from this particular area, that is marine, or we can say estuarine environment, or the places adjacent to the sea coast and the creeks around. This is the most potential area for these people, these Harappans fish exploitation. And the freshwater environments were also exploited, especially as the data indicates during the post-urban periods. Most of these freshwater environments were more exploited. There is a slight difference in marine fish consumption inside and outside the fortification at Bagasra and Shikarpur. At Bagasra, from the upper image, that is from the phase 2, you can see almost some sort of differences in marine fish consumption. But outside the fortification, especially towards phase 3, there is a certain fall in the utilization of marine fish. The similar pattern can be observed in Shikarpur as well. Here also we have inside the fortification you have more use of marine fish, and especially the size of the fish is also very larger inside the fortification. Maybe that means maybe the outside dwellers they had lesser privilege to access to this kind of better catch of the fish. Maybe the better catch was enjoyed mostly by the inside dwellers. And there are bone modifications on fish bones. There are a lot of cut marks, burn marks, some sort of scavenging evidence, chewing evidence. Some bones have been transformed to some kind of tools like this one. And some have been modified as ornaments like this. This is a shark vertebra which has been modified into a ornament-like thing. And when these cut marks are observed through bone elements, more cut marks are confined towards these locations. That means, especially towards the lower cranial elements, they are mostly devoid of any cut marks. You can see cut marks on the cranial bones, as well as on the cranium, vertebrae. And these are the indication of probable butchery pattern or the cutting pattern. They were probably cutting the fish into small chunks. And you see the bone element-wise distribution at Kanmer, especially of this particular species, Latus calcarifer. There is a higher representation of clethra element, which is indicated in blue. In comparison to this clethra, other lower cranial elements are very less represented. Like these are the lower cranial, other lower cranial elements which are represented in less numbers. And this is the clethrum element, which is represented in more numbers, like one is the total number represented. And when we see the denseness of these bones are all equally dense. That means if this clethra bone was preserved, then the other bone should also have been preserved. But that didn't happen here. This, which is an indication of decapitation or processing of the fish at fish landing site, and they only brought some portion or the consumable portion to the site. Whether they transported it in fresh form, salted form, dried form, which is a question to be solved. And some patterns can be reflected in other aspects as well, like at Bagasra and Shikarpur, the inside and outside the fortification difference can be observed on the consumption of sheep, goat, as well as cattle. That proportion is different. I see Brad Chase has done a study on that. And at Kanmer, it's non-fish faunal records. I mean, towards late phase of the Kanmer, there is a lot of wild animals. The quantity of wild animals is increasing. And similarly, in archaeobotanical evidence also, towards the later part of the occupation, millets are dominating. This kind of shifts can be noticed in other assemblages as well, other studies as well. These are the conclusion. Total 28 varieties of fish were identified, and out of these, 3 zones of fish exploitation areas were assumed from the on the basis of taxa identification. And we can say marine fishery was very well in existence, especially during the urban Harappan phases. And freshwater fishery was marginal, but became intensified during the post-urban phases. The inhabitants inside the fortifications enjoyed more marine fish. Decapitation of fish and transportation was also observed. And through the studies, we can say fish was something more than supplementary and seems very inevitable along with other mammalian fauna. These are the acknowledgements. I'm very much grateful to IIT Gandhinagar for this opportunity, Department of Archaeology, University of Kerala, Deccan College, Pune, MSU Baroda, Rajasthan Vidyapeeth, Aquatic Biology and Fisheries Department in University of Kerala, and many others like Dr. Pankaj Goyal, Professor K. Krishnan, Professor K. Ban, Dr. William Belcher, Dr. A. Biju Kumar, and fishermen people at, in and around Navinal. They helped me a lot in assembling this reference collection. And thank you all for listening.